Σας. Είμαι η Μαρία Georgopoulou, η Διευθύντρια της Γennadeion Βιβλιοθήκης και είναι μεγάλη μας χαρά, μεγάλη μου χαρά που είμαστε όλοι εδώ επί σκηνής για να γιορτάσουμε και να σκεφτούμε και να καταλάβουμε την σημασία αυτών των υποτροφιών. Since the event is broadcasted and we do hope that it will be a way to emphasize the importance and the depth and the breadth of these fellowships, We're going to conduct it in English. So I would just like to start with a few thoughts because these Schwarz Fellowships on music and urban architecture have been a relatively recent addition to the program, the academic program of the Gennadius Library in the American School 4 years ago, and have already enriched the program in many different ways. We thought, because very often fellowships are, and the fellows who come are well known to us, who see them almost on a daily basis, and to their cohort here at the American School, the other fellows and the other members of the American School. It is not always very clear what they do. We thought it would be very important to engage in a conversation with them so that we have a better sense of why it is important to have fellowships that are a little bit different than the other fellowships that we have at the American School and at the Gennadius Library, and what these fellowships bring to us and what we bring to the fellows. So let me just mention 3 or 4 things that, to my mind, have been extremely important and continue to be important. First of all, by definition, we are, in the American School and the Gennadius Library, we are a place that is frequented, and our sort of normal audience has to do with archaeologists, with classicists, with Byzantinists, with historians, and with modern historians. By having people who focus on architecture and urban architecture and on music, we have the chance to have this interdisciplinary approach that we see every day and that is important and significant for us. Now, why would the Gennadius be important for the fellows in music and urban architecture? Well, the Gennadius and any library of the caliber of the Gennadius offers rare books, offers manuscripts. The archives of the American School that are actually in the same building as the Gennadius Library offer very unique, important material that very often contains almost secrets, because the archives have not been read by everyone. So there is a lot of information that one can find there. In addition, of course, to the things that the fellows can find at the Gennadius Library, can find at the American School, Athens, which is the center of Athens, is not very large, also has many other important archives and different establishments that actually can offer material for the fellows. Now, what does the community of fellows of the American School, of the members and associate members, offer to the Schwarz Fellows? I think there's a lot of osmosis and there are many important things that we have to understand. One, of course, is that our members, the American School members and the Gennadius, the other Gennadius Fellows, focus on a diachronical history of Greece, focus on archaeology, do excavations, think about material culture, and have a longue durée perspective, if you will. And I think this is very important for the Schwarz Fellows. But the most important thing, and this I think we have all felt as academics and as scholars, when you try to explain what you do to somebody who is not in your own field, you really need to think very carefully about how to do it. We've all done it as teachers. I mean, it's important to get to the essence of what you do. And I think that this is something extremely valuable. I left for the end, what do the Schwarz Fellows give to us? And by us, I mean the regular, if you will, community to us as historians and archaeologists. They give us fresh perspectives, in some ways very innovative ways of looking at things. Music and architecture, urban architecture, I mean, is very much a way in which we can think about identity, we can think about memory, we can think about social cohesion. And so they push us beyond our traditional boundaries. I'm not going to even mention the fact that when we have, I mean, there's a performative aspect, especially when it comes to musicians, that we all know, and we have many of our members and associate members in the room, we all know how important it is to have this new way of looking at things with the fresh, innovative eyes of the fellows. So these are my first thoughts. I wanted to share with you some numbers and statistics. The program started in 2021 thanks to the generosity of the Schwarz Foundation and especially Georgopoulou Schwarz, whom we thank dearly and very much from the bottom of our heart for this sort of rich program. For the music, we have had in this last 5 years 35 applicants. 21 of those were Greeks, 5 were Americans, and the rest were anywhere in between, European, Turkish, even somebody from Iran and Syria. There are 24 of them, 69% were PhD candidates. 5 of them, of the applicants, were postdocs, and 4 of them were performers. And this is, I'm reading from the applications. For urban architecture, we've had 52 people apply, 35 Greeks and 4 US, and the rest in between. 23 of them were PhD candidates, 16 postdocs, and 10 practicing architects. I think the two people who are going to help and lead the discussion, Nikos Tsouchlos, who is president of the Odeon here in Athens and also professor of music at the University of the Ionian University, and Andreas Giacumakatos from an architectural historian and an architect from University of Florence and the University of here in Athens of the School of Fine Arts in architecture. We thought that we wanted to really think through all of these issues and have a discussion with the fellows. We have 7 fellows with us and 1 fellow online. Maria Papavasilopoulou is this year's music fellow, and she has a joint fellowship with the Fulbright Foundation, and now she's doing the Fulbright part where she's doing her research in Oregon. So I will just mention the names of the people in the panel. Hi, Maria. So Alexandra Bourcot was our music fellow last year. Panita Karamanea was our urban architecture fellow in 22-23. Metaxia Markaki is our current fellow in urban architecture. Konstantina Georgiadou was our first fellow in architecture in 21-22. Sofia Svarna was our music fellow the first year in 21-22. Alexandra Mourgou, our music fellow in 22-23. My brain is not working. And Christos Kritikos, sorry, blanking on your name, was our urban architecture fellow last year. So I will then leave the floor to my two fellow interlocutors and open the discussion.
So, good evening to everybody. Thank you very much to be here tonight. I'm very glad to be here, and in this very interesting opportunity to listen from brilliant new fellows about their research. So I should invite fellows of music, okay? I will invite, and you will.
We have agreed. We have agreed to switch.
An agreement.
Although I told him that him being also a musician, I am at a disadvantage with the architects, but never mind.
Okay, so we can go in order of the list. I should invite Sofia Svarna, fellowship for research on music. On this first round, we will speak about the kind of research you did at the Gennadius library and how important was your research in the Gennadius library. Okay. The second question will be how important has been the second round. How important has been your the opportunity of the Schwarz Fellowship for your research goals, for your research program, and for your scientific opportunity for the present and the future. Okay, so we can start calling Sofia Svarna to speak about early soundscapes, very interesting subject, early soundscapes of the Mediterranean, a cultural and musical understanding of space, time, and its people. Thank you.
Do I need this? Thank you.
We have asked all of you to be brief, right?
Right, yes, it's only one page. My project, Early Soundscapes of the Mediterranean, a cultural and musical understanding of space, time, and its people, has been mainly inspired from the library's collections of travel accounts. Music cultures across the Mediterranean is a story of coherence and also a story of diversity. Various musical encounters among those cultures have been central in musicological searchlight and are scrutinized both with positive and negative connotations in related bibliography. I focused on English travelers who traveled to East Mediterranean from 16th to 18th century. At that time, neither musicology nor ethnomusicology were existing. What I discovered was interesting but amateur musical descriptions, varying from full acceptance to the Mediterranean people's musics, to more problematic and ambivalent notions. By highlighting the travelers' various reactions to the musics that they met, my aim was to enrich the contemporary academic discussion about the so-called global turn in music studies. With ethnomusicology as my point of departure, I searched for a wide umbrella of musical pieces, concluding popular, holy, or classical, and creating the early sound map of the Mediterranean, a digital tool which includes those carefully selected musical recordings in full counterpoint with the travelers' discourses. I don't know if we see the map. Yes. Here's the map I created. It is an interactive map which I have put some musical pieces and also abstracts from various travelers' discourses. Their juxtaposition uncovers a special listening guide to historical musics of East and West within the Mediterranean soundscape. For example, it is interesting to see that at the same time when a traveler discovered the modal music system of Ottoman music, maybe we can see the next one. Thank you. The music of the palace or the call to prayer back to his homeland, a composer named Joseph Haydn was composing his London symphonies. I then arrived to an interesting current point of departure in historical musicology, which is concluded to the following phrase, it is not mine. Western art music cannot be studied in vacuum anymore, but must be situated in a global ontological framework of connected histories. And maybe I can stop here and continue a bit later. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks a lot. Only one question. Can we say that your research belongs to the field of ethnomusicology?
Actually, yes, because I am combining all these musical cultures of the Mediterranean and how they interact, or how we can put together and make some comparisons. They have common things or not. And of course, we can travel through the digital tool, like the travelers did, and meet those cultures. Also, because they were Western travelers, what is important is that they have the point of view of the West, meaning that normally in the 18th century, they knew only the music of their times, of their place. So maybe we can discover other classical musics as well. So this is the point of view of ethnomusicology. Thank you.
May I also ask something? You were speaking about musical pieces.
Yep.
Did you deal also with musical practices? I mean, more, activities rather than objects, virtual objects.
Yes, but that was before this research, because it was also the subject of my PhD. I did fieldwork, ethnographic fieldwork in early music. So I had to do with discography and also concerts of musical ensembles that they are doing early music, and they combine East and West.
Thank you.
The first about architecture.
Yes. Okay. So, Mrs. Georgiadou, could you tell us about the subject of your research, the title?
Sure. Hello, everyone. It's really nice to be here back at the American School. Thank you for the invitation. My name is Konstantina Georgiadou. I'm an architect, and I'm focusing on architectural heritage at the intersections of cultures, mainly focusing on territories of conflict and negotiation. Just to give you a bit of a brief background on my research, I'm looking into how transitions of identity and power were manifested in the built environment, and through my doctoral work, I looked into the transformation of the Greek North through its transition from the Ottoman Empire to the newly established Greek state at the beginning of the 20th century and the population exchange of 23. Through this quite complex period, we saw the employment and manipulation of urban landscapes, from the transfiguration of urban plans all the way down to appropriation of buildings of civic, religious, or residential character in order to realize and formalize change and establish the new Hellenic national identity in the Greek North. In the following year, in 2021, I was honored to receive the inaugural Schwarz Fellowship on Urban Architecture, which allowed me to continue this piece of work and expand it into more nuanced approaches with a project called Minarets to Bell Towers, the Perseverance of Religious Architecture. Through accessing, being here present in Athens and also accessing the collections of the Gennadius library, I was able to identify a series of case studies where religious buildings were venerated by communities, both Muslim and Christian communities. So practices of religious syncretism took place, and I argued through my research that I was the reason for their perseverance as a whole, as structures, or specifically the reason why certain architectural features were retained. I looked into travelers' accounts found here at the library. I also was really inspired by the work of Friedrich Haslak, Christianity and Islam under the Sultans, where a century before my work, he documented a number of what he called ambiguous sites, ambiguous sanctuaries in the Eastern Mediterranean. I looked into his notes and then created a catalog of my own, visiting sites here in Athens, specifically looking at this church in Psyri called Agios Ioannis της Κολώνας, a really interesting site that through the help of the American school I was able to acquire a permit for the Ephraim of Antiquities and fully document architecturally for the first time in recent history. Compare it back to what I found in the holdings of the school and continue research in the future on the basis of that with further funding on the other side of the Aegean, in Turkey, in Istanbul, into similar sites. So that's briefly what I've done during my time here and afterwards.
Thank you very much.
I would like to ask you, your interest, your research on religious architecture has to do also with church architecture of the 20th century, modern or contemporary architecture, church architecture?
Not as much. I was focusing on transition of existing buildings before the 20th century, but as a result of the political events of that period. So I'm interested in how buildings are converted from mosques to churches and the other way around, which in many cases have been associated with imposition of power, the change of power, religious and civic. But as I came to find out through my work here at the library, there are also quite unique scenarios of other approaches where the building is thinly focused, the building manages to survive in a much more sort of subtle and indirect way.
Okay, thank you. Go on?
Let's go on.
Good. We go second year, 2022-2023, Alexandra Mourgou from Athens Polytechnic, School of Architecture, and University of Pantheon Sorbonne, worked on rebetiko geographies, cultural interactions and musical blending from the Eastern Mediterranean to the urban spaces of deviation. Very nice. Good. Please.
Hello, everyone. Surprisingly, I'm an architect, and I studied as it was mentioned, the National Technical University of Athens. But beyond the walls of academia, I have studied and performed classical and traditional music in Paris, Athens, and Toronto. My involvement with musical performance has played a decisive role in my perspective, at least in my theoretical and methodological explorations. So my research interests and publications focus mainly on urban cultural, historical geography, and more specifically, on the interrelations between space and music. Which brings me to my PhD that was about the blossoming of urban popular music and rebetiko during the interwar period, Piraeus and its neighborhoods. Okay. Good. So my PhD paved the way for further exploration on the interrelations between space and music. So during the academic year 2022-2023, I was a senior associate member of the American School of Classical Studies at Athens and a Schwarz Fellow for Research on Music, working on my project Rebetiko Geographies, Cultural Interactions and Musical Blending from the Eastern Mediterranean to the urban spaces of deviance. This research investigated the interconnections between the evolution of music and the places where it flourished, highlighting the multi-ethnic identities and their spatial representations through the narrations that emerge from the archive of Ilias Petropoulos. My goal was to unfold the multiple meanings of Rebetiko and to produce alternative readings on the imaginary, musical, cultural, and human geographies that emerged from the visual resources of the archive, such as photos, gravures, artworks, drawing, and sketches. It's a very rich and interesting archive, and I focused from the local to the supra-local scale and vice versa. So I had to, in order to connect those two different, let's say, not obviously related fields of music and space, a hybrid methodological approach had to be adopted, drawing from cultural and critical geography, history, ethnomusicology, and social anthropology. And of course, apart from the literature review and the archival research, oral interviews with key informants should be conducted. Okay, so the outcomes of the research have been disseminated in international conferences and symposia, invited lectures in peer-reviewed journals, which are listed before, but no need to focus on that. Last but not least, this research offered to me a new perspective that had a decisive role in my second book, which I will soon publish. And it gave me the opportunity to delve into a critical approach and a critical analysis of the archives. So just 1 second, I would like to wholeheartedly thank the Foundation and the American School, because this fellowship gave me the chance to dig further into academic questions, because the possibility of connecting music and space is not always to be taken for granted in the wider academia and, let's say, milieus. And I have to thank especially the archivists, because their contribution was decisive. They assisted me a lot with the navigation through a large and a very complex archive, as well as Maria Georgopoulou, that has been supportive and encouraged me to contact key informants. Without those interviews, I think that my perspective on the archive would be much different. From September, I am postdoctoral researcher at York University in Toronto and principal investigator at projects that focus on the places of the Greek town on the Danforth, which is the Greek town in Toronto, during the 60s and the 70s. And I'm trying to point out these interrelations between space and music in another spatial and temporal context. I think I can stop here.
Okay, as you like.
It's very interesting. Just one question. You're speaking about diasporic experience. I happened to bump into a collection of piano rolls, you know, the pianola, this sort of perforated paper, which used to be played on special instruments. And there was this special kind of piano rolls, which was called, I don't know, text roll or something like that. It was a sort of karaoke of beginning of the 20th century, including words. So there was an American firm, I don't remember the name, producing Greek-speaking piano rolls with songs, including operettas of the 20s, which were sung in Athens. So one asks oneself, how did the Greek public in the United States connect to what was happening in Athens and what was, you know, what was being sung in Athens at the time? But this showed a sort of bridge between Greece and this specific diaspora in New York. So I wonder if such sources, if you have found such kinds of sources in your research as far as diasporic experience Canada is concerned.
Well, I'm working more with oral interviews and oral history, so I mainly focus on people's experiences rather than archives. And for the first time after a long time, I'm working with people that they are still alive, let's say, because I'm working on I'm working currently on the 70s and on the 60s.
I see. Yeah.
I'm not sure if your question refers mostly to my research at the Gennadius library, which focused on the interwar period mainly, but I haven't come across something like that. In fact,
you haven't.
What was happening during the 20s in the diasporic, let's say, milieus, is quite obscure, I can say.
Yeah.
As far as music is concerned.
We are thinking of really exploring the connection of music that was produced in America for the Greek community or in diaspora and how it circulated. And there will be a lecture on that in mid-March and hopefully an exhibition that we think it's going to be quite interesting to explore different kinds of connections, because it's clear that there were many things that were happening, and we have to explore further. So stay tuned, and you will tell us more about the pianola.
Sure. You can have, there are 2 rolls with texts in the archives of the Conservatoire, which we can lend you for your exhibition. It's a very intriguing thing.
Okay. I want to say you are not the first architect that does research on music, on theoretical approach on music. There are a lot of people, very, very good scholars, very good researchers. I would like to know how much this kind of research you are doing is followed in Greece, is done in Greece. How regional is your research in the Greek environment?
Okay. Yes, for sure. I'm not the first, and I'm not the last architect which is doing research on music, because many of us, we have studied music, we have for many years. So there are many interconnections, not only as far as, low-scale architecture is concerned, but especially when it comes to the city, when it comes to urban life, when it comes to history. The matter of space is of high importance, because not only space and the personal relations in space produce culture, but also culture itself produces representations of place and defines place and space in many ways. Well, I don't feel that this kind of research or this kind of approach is very much common, at least in Greece. And sometimes, well, on the one hand, that gives me the opportunity to delve into something which is original. On the other hand, it is a little bit, it can get a little bit uncomfortable when I have to explain why those things are related, which was something that I really appreciated in the North American, let's say, environment in the American school and in Canada, that disciplines are not perceived like very strictly and in a way, in an introvert way.
Good, thank you.
So, I think Mrs. Markaki. Sorry, I.
Oh, it doesn't matter. I mean, I
okay.
don't know what is, but I think. Do you want to go by?
Panita now.
Okay.
Okay. Good. Okay.
So I start.
Yes.
Yes, but you need to get the microphone.
Yes, and can you open the? Okay. Can you hear me? Yes.
No.
No.
Try this one.
Thank you. Good afternoon. Okay, thank you. I'm Panita Karamanea. I'm an architect. I have studied here architecture and landscape architect. I started in Barcelona. And my basic research interest was on the landscape of Attica. So by coming in the Gennadius library in the American School of Classical Studies, I was in front of a huge wealth of information, data, mapping, paintings, texts on Attica. And eventually I focused on the travelogues of the Grand Tour travelers, because I was interested in understanding how the landscape of Attica evolved till the contemporary environment we have. At that time, I was also researching and I was investigating and finishing my PhD, that it was on the west coast of Attica. So my main research interest was to understand the environment and the landscape through mapping. I wanted to use maps as a tool of understanding, mapping, designing the landscape. And in my time here, I focused, as you see here, in also the digital version of the maps of the Gennadius library. And I would like to show you some... can you change the slide, please? Can you change the slide, please? Yes, thank you. So I was in front of a series of paintings done from the 17th century to the 20th century, that they were functioning as a visual memory of the landscape. The landscape that today is kind of hidden. So I tried to map afterwards the landscape I was seeing in these paintings, and can you move please? And in all the maps that I found in the archives, starting from an imaginary representation of the city to a representation that had to do with a hilly environment, till a lot of archives that were explaining the toponymy that is still vivid and is still active today, and that was a direct linkage and connection to the past, to the ancient past of the landscape of Athens and of Attica. Can you please move? And after all these discoveries, I ended up into axes that helped me understand and realize the landscape and the city I also have lived all my life. These travelogues, they're talking about the rediscovery of a landscape, of an ancient landscape. So they are an act of symbolism. They pay a homage to the Attica and to Athens, but they also explain us a landscape that today is hidden or maybe in a latent condition, about to be lost, but maybe could be still saved. So for me, there were these two very important discoveries, let's say. The first one is the mental construction. Can you please change? That the landscape is as a cultural, interdisciplinary field of research. And also, all these mappings and paintings, they form a record of the past, that they could be an interactive contemporary tool, not only because of their beauty, but as vivid visual memories of what we still have, and maybe we could protect and reveal and bring again in the era of climate change that we're trying to renaturalize the city. So can you please change again? So all these paintings and engravings and mapping, finally they became a very vivid and important tool to set criteria and parameters of how rethink, rediscover and reveal a very important condition of the city that today is being neglected. Can you please move one more? I think I have. So I try to do all these comparisons, and I would like to finish with that. I'm just here showing a comparison of some permanencies of engravings, and permanencies of natural elements that are being repeated all the time in all these visual memories, visual records. The hills, the water element, for example, Sunion, that are elements of the natural landscape, but that they have to do with identity of what this landscape is, how the city has evolved, and what it means, first from the foreigner's eyes, the construction of this Western gaze towards a landscape of origins that is the Attica Basin, but also as an identity for today's contemporary city and of what Attica and Athens means to all of us. So I think, yes, briefly, that's all.
I'm curious to know from you how important has been your formative years in Barcelona concerning the question of environment, landscape architecture, landscape design, and so on.
Yes, I think that what I mostly gained from my stay there and my relationship with this mentality is that the landscape and the city are a totality, are together, are one entity. They're not fragmented parts that they fight each other. We should try to rethink them as one asset, one entity, something unified, that trying to find the right doses, let's say, percentage of each one, we would try to find a way to survive and to have a symbiosis with the natural landscape. And I think this is the only itinerary that we have in front.
Because we know that Barcelona is a pioneer city on environmental studies, on design of landscape architecture, with so many famous architects who worked there in Barcelona and in Catalonia in general. So this is a very good school for everybody who are interested in these questions.
Yes, it's a very good school, and it's a model, the way they think. And I think the most important is apart from the theory and the research by cartography, it's the way they understand space by cartography. So that was the linkage I did with my research here, that I tried to find, by this old mapping, I tried to find their current interpretation and their current importance, not as a historical only approach, but as a contemporary tool for us now. So if we see this cartography, this mapping, or even the paintings, I saw them as maps, because they map the landscape, they are archives, and they report what it used to be. So I tried to see all this wealth that I found in the Gennadius as a mapping of today. Because the important thing I think that I gained from Barcelona is that they take mapping as a tool, and they are talking about landscape not as a theoretical approach, but as a way to design space, to intervene on space, but not only from the point of view of the built environment, but from the point of view also from the natural environment. Try to find the right relationship between the two. So I think this is the most important we could say we gain from this approach, from Morales, Ignacio de Morales, Manuel de Morales. They were talking about relationships.
Carlos Ferrater.
Yes. Miralles, yes. They are talking about relationships between the architectural construction and the natural background that gives birth to it. So it's all about relationships. And we have to understand this background, this natural environment, in order to act on it. And understand it as a cultural construction, but also as a biological its biological characteristics, that is ecology and...
Thank you.
Yes,
Thank you.
okay.
Okay. So we go to the next academic year, 2023-2024, with a very, very interesting research by Alexandra Burkot, Greek continuity and resistance in Dimitrios Levidis' Liliad. I'm surprised.
Great, okay. Well, thank you very much for having me. It's so nice to be back in Athens. I used to visit the city a lot when I was very young because my mom's family is Greek and my grandmother, my yaya, she had a place in Valiro and she had a place on Poros, so I used to come here all the time when I was young. So being able to be back in the city when I'm able to fully appreciate it more has been really special. So thank you again for having me here. My project focuses on one single item in the Gennadius library, and it is the handwritten musical manuscript for a piece by Greek composer Dimitrios Levidis. It is an oratorio, which is like a religious opera, set to an adaptation of the Iliad, and it was composed in the middle of the Axis occupation of Greece. I think the parallels speak for themselves. So my project is a combination of three separate factors. The first is an in-depth look at the history of Greek classical music, as in Greek music in the Western tradition, which has been studied a lot within Greece and within the greater Balkan area, but hasn't quite broken out into the English-speaking parts of musicology, partly just because of the language barrier. It's very difficult. The second strain is the use of Greek antiquity and the inspiration that Western classical musicians take when they write music, specifically, or particularly in opera, which is my training as a former opera singer. The foundations of opera especially are rooted in this antiquity, because when theorists and composers, whenever they try to go back to the drawing board, whenever they want to reinvent the genre, they always return to antiquity. Usually they return to Orpheus, because he's the ultimate musician, he's the blueprint. But they always draw from the swell of antiquity, because antiquity forms the basis of Western culture as we know it, especially the Iliad. And then the third strain is exploring this idea that the supposed continuity thesis, as put forth by Paparikopoulos, is simultaneously imposed upon the Greek populace and invoked by them in different turns. So when Greece was a young nation state, they had just won the Revolutionary War, a lot of the artists and theorists rushed to affirm their place as the source of Western culture, and the asking of aid from other Western nations was in part repaying this great cultural debt that they were owed. And then at the same time, it's not that simple. As you all know, the continuity thesis is a lot more complicated than simple, the same people have inhabited the same lands for so long, and so they're the exact same descendants from antiquity, which is just not true, because there's been thousands of years in between the time of Leonidas and the time of Athens today. There's the Byzantine Empire, there's the Ottoman Empire, there's just so much more that hasn't been I don't want to say it hasn't been explored, because obviously it has, but especially with regards to music, there's so much more to the continuity thesis as expressed in the musical cultures of Greece, both the classical art culture and the folk culture, that I can't wait to sink my teeth into. With regards to my academic career, I actually came to Greece last year with an entirely different dissertation in mind. And then once I found the material here, I knew I had to switch. I knew I had to study it because I knew it would be something so exciting and so new and so relevant to myself and my family and my community. So I am so thrilled to be back once again. Thank you.
Well, thank you for this. Yeah, Levidis is a very interesting case, of course. How would you describe his work? I mean, there is obviously a sort of constant search for a national identity, isn't there? And this identity is, in this case, as far as the subject of the work is concerned, he's looking for that in antiquity. But do you feel that in this music there are other elements of national identity present in the style, in the musical style? I mean, the language, the musical language is a Western one.
Yes, stylistically, I would characterize him mostly in line with the French musical culture, which makes sense because he spent most of his professional life in Paris. So his music is very reminiscent of an evolved impressionist style, so think Debussy, but like with a little Eastern flair thrown in. It's interesting that you say that he searches for a national identity because in reading his memoirs, which he wrote during the war years and which were held at the Bibliothèque Nationale de France, he actually disavows the title of national composer. He says about his colleague Manolis Kalomiris, he is welcome to the title. I don't want it. I'm not a national composer just because I have Greek elements in my music. So he, I think, more than some of his colleagues, is interested in a broader universal style rather than identifying something specifically Greek. And I think that speaks to his education not only in Paris, but Athens and Munich as well.
Well, this is also a political issue at that time, being with Kalomiris or against Kalomiris. So it's a very complex story. Well, thank you very much.
I would only, curiosity, I would like to know if Dimitrios Levidis has a relationship with Alekos Levidis, the painter and academic, member of the Academy of Athens. Is there a relationship about these families?
I think so. I've been having a really hard time piecing together biographical information, partly because, of course, the material preserved from the war years is not always there. It didn't always make it. So he mentions some family members in his memoirs, especially those who had died as a result of the war. But I've been unable at this point to track down concrete genealogical evidence that he is related. But I think he is. I think he mentions it. It seems like the Levidis clan, was it Nikolaos Levidis, who was an attaché during the Revolutionary War? I think he is related to them, but I think also he had some broader issues with family.
Okay.
So it seems a little complicated.
Good. Okay. So if this time I'm not mistaken, it's Mr. Kritikos' turn.
Thank you. Oh my God. Alekos Levidis also did the covers of Mikis Theodorakis albums, right? So it's interesting his relationship to music as well. I'm Christos Kritikos. I finished School of Architecture at the National Technical University of Athens some time ago. Then I did a master's, postgraduate course on research on architecture, and then a Master of Arts at the Bartlett School of Architecture in London, UCL, in architectural history. Then I did my PhD here, and I finished right when I entered as a fellow as a Schwarz Fellow of Research in Urban Architecture. I'm going to start right off with the research thing. Around the same time as the recently deceased Françoise Chouet writes L'Allégorie du Patrimoine, when she critically relativizes issues concerning different types of preservation, architectural preservation for that matter, the renowned Greek urban historian Dimitris Philippidis writes in his book about the Greek city. Even those buildings that are listed have not ensured their survival, with them being led to disappear either by deliberate abandonment or arson. In other words, even building groups in the fabric which are supposed to be protected are condemned to destruction simply by being added to the list of listed buildings. Philippidis describes the surprisingly common Greek phenomenon of Greek owners illegally demolishing the listed or soon-to-be listed properties in hope of eventually being able to exploit the land in a more convenient and or profitable way. This kind of shocking and seemingly irrational phenomena came to be part of Greece's reality as part of an ongoing conflict between modern-built heritage and private property. While a similar kind of conflict has been around since the first years of the Greek nation, with expropriations prioritizing the unearthing of antiquities over the citizens' private interests, recent architectural heritage has been building a different kind of tension. Slide change, please. Owning a listed building puts owners in a limbic situation where their property might remain theirs, but it also culturally addresses the whole society. However, in Greece, the increased costs of preservation burden the owners almost exclusively, and bureaucratic obstacles appear in each step of maintaining and using listed property, rendering any effort to invest in listed buildings time-consuming apart from financially challenging. It was only after the end of the 7-year dictatorship in 1974 that Greek officials started pushing towards the broadening of the possible objects of preservation, including modest buildings reflecting recent local histories. With 1975 being proclaimed as the European Architectural Heritage Year and other transnational developments, the post-dictatorship revision of the Greek constitution in 1975 rendered the protection of the natural and cultural environment as an obligation of the state, a development that was considered pioneering even by European standards at the time. Alas, the same constitution, of course, still included the protection of the rights to property, elevating the existing conflict between cultural heritage and private property to a constitutional level. Now let's have a look at the unique archival material held at the Gennadius library, diving into the Tsouchlos papers. Due to his unique profile, Konstantin was deemed more than appropriate to lead the Ministry of Culture and Sciences after the change of the regime in 1974. In 1975, Tsouchlos was also trusted with the unique position of chairman of the Constitutional Revision Committee before being voted to be the first ever president of the Greek democracy. Access to the Konstantin papers held at the Gennadius library allows one to witness the multiple aspects of the constitutional revision of 1975. For example, found within the archive are 3 different drafts of the 1975 Constitution, including version of the said article, where one can explore minor or major changes, even regarding the phrasing. Most importantly, through the official transcripts of the Parliamentary Committee of the Constitution, one can locate points where this quote-unquote complicated in terms of subject article is being discussed. At the same time, one can explore Tsouchlos' cultural and or political networks, revealing his influences and interpreting significant choices he made. Slide change, please. Thank you. For example, through the correspondence found in the archive, we can discern the extent of his relationship with André Malraux, the person on whom the actual concept of European ministers of culture was based on, the person who was behind the idea of safeguarding entire urban sectors, something first implemented in French cities in the form of secteurs sauvegardés. A final slide change, thank you. Parts of the research conducted during my fellowship here have already found their way in international conferences, in a few publications either published during 2024 or soon to be published, as well as in architectural history courses I have been teaching during the past year. Thank you for everything and thank you for your attention.
Okay, thank you. We know that the question of protection of architectural heritage is an enormous and very difficult topic. With your research or with your experience you have now, did you arrive to some conclusions about the best ways of protecting architectural heritage, even from the legal point of view.
Do you remember a couple of years ago they started talking again about the law that was not implemented in 2014, a law that would permit banks or individuals or companies to kind of rent listed properties for about 50 years, and after that they would actually pay the owners money. This has never happened because of the actual constitutional conflict. It all falls down the drain because whoever wants may just say that it's my constitutional right to retain my property, and that's it. So let's just say that this has not caused more problems, the constitutional part, but it has just sustained them. I don't think that the solution is people selling the properties to whomever is able of preserving it, or the solution is neither funding everything until everything is protected in the best possible way and preserved, but we need to find the silver lining in this whole thing. We can walk around this city, and the fact that the only case where urban preservation has actually succeeded in Athens, for that matter, is Plaka, and the fact that this is related to the financial capabilities of the owners of Plaka after the 70s especially, is something that we should not be happy about. We can see all those abandoned listed buildings that are in this state exactly because of the legal framework that is bestowed upon them. So I would not propose a solution that either delists building or proposes funding, but I would just try to find the holes within those different frameworks that do not correlate properly.
Okay.
Well, personally, you are speaking to my heart because of the whole story of the Athens Conservatoire, which was not protected. And somehow the need arose to protect it once it appeared that the present administration had hope of doing something with this building, you see? And this is where we felt that protecting this building was actually to save it from the people that had every wish to do something out of it. So it was a very negative force. Well, everything, all is well that ends well, but I fully understand what you say. Sometimes the quickest way to make something disappear is to declare it as a protected thing. So.
Yes.
Well, anyway, thank you.
Okay, so we go to the last fellowship academic year, 2024-2025. First is music. You know, music architecture or architecture and music has always been a dilemma, also for me. But this is not, I think, for so many people. This is another story. Maria Papavasilopoulou worked on music and memory among the Sephardic Jews of Rhodes, from the homeland to the diaspora and the internet. Okay. Maria is
hello.
Okay. Hi, Maria.
Hello.
Hello.
So nice to be here among you, even though from afar, and thank you so much for organizing this event. My name is Maria. I am a PhD student at the Department of Music Studies at the University of Athens, and my PhD research analyzed the historical trajectories of memory and identity inscribed in the Sephardic music of the Jewish community of Rhodes on 3 levels, in the island, in the diasporic community of Seattle, and on a global level in the Sephardic Studies digital collection of the University of Washington. So this year I also received the Fulbright Scholarship So currently I'm a visiting research student at the University of Washington. That's why I'm here. I conduct my fieldwork concerning the diasporic community of Seattle and the Sephardic Studies digital collection. But I will be soon back to complete my research at the Gennadius Library, where I'm studying Nicholas Mavris' papers, and the title of my research is The Music of the Dodecanese in the Nicholas Mavris Papers, Localism, Translocalism, and the Rhodian Jewish Diaspora. I only had the possibility to study this archive for a short period, but I will focus on his papers when I will return from the United States. So at this point, I can only share some preliminary points and remarks because my research has not been completed yet. Nicholas Mavris was a very important figure for the history and the folklore of the Dodecanese. He was born in Egypt at the end of the 19th century, but he was from Kassos, Dodecanese. And he lived many years of his life in New York, where in 1940 he founded the National Dodecanese Council, with main goal the liberation of the Dodecanese Islands. And he was actually the first commander of Rhodes in 1948 when the islands were liberated. He was a great scientist, he was a doctor, a visionary, and a man of letters, with very important contribution in the field of folk music and folklore of the Dodecanese and of Rhodes in particular. And actually in his papers we can find folk songs of the Dodecanese that he collected himself and Egyptian folk songs. And it is important because his material, his archive has been only partly studied by local historians. And while it might seem that there is no direct connection to my PhD research, I want to highlight Mavris' active role in documenting and preserving the music tradition of the Dodecanese in the diasporic communities in Egypt and the United States, as well as his role in the resolution of the Dodecanese issue. And that will allow me to explore the role of the diaspora in the constitution of the Dodecanese collective memory and identity on a translocal level. And this point offers, of course, a very interesting parallel to the case of Jewish diasporic communities in the United States and the role of music in shaping collective memory. Thank you very much.
No, I want to thank you personally, and okay, we can go to the last one.
I know how it works. So, Mrs. Markaki, it's a long project title. So, can you? You'll probably manage better than.
Perfect. Let me check if this works. No, so I will. So, hello, my name is Metaxia Markaki. I'm an architect that drifted into critical urban studies and territorial research the last many years. I just completed my PhD at the ETH Zurich, and now I continue to a postdoctoral project with the support of the Schwarz Foundation, holding the fellowship on research in urban architecture. So, although it's for research on urban architecture, I will take you to a very different landscape, and that is the mountainous regions of Greek eparchia, where since decades processes of depopulation and marginalization have been shaping an extensive peripheral territory, the peripheria, as it is called in Greek. Peripheria means literally the periphery, but also the urban outside or the other of urban Athens. Next. Oh, thanks. So the pressing question here is actually what is the future of these depopulating peripheral regions, especially under the light of the current ongoing economic crisis and ecological crisis. What are the marginal stories that these landscapes narrate, telling us alternative social and ecological visions? And what can we, as architects and urban planners, can do to to embrace and address their challenges and perhaps embrace their potential. So, perfect. So we journey to Arcadia and Mount Menalon to delve into the politics of land and nature that unfold in these regions. Arcadia is traditionally known as a pastoral mythical utopia where culture and nature coexist harmoniously. Nevertheless, Arcadia is an actual region that, if the pointer works, maybe not. Yeah, actually it does. It's somewhere there. It's at the mountainous core of Peloponnese in Greece, facing today multiple struggles at social, economic, and ecological levels. So we can perhaps change the slide now. So beyond this idyllic rural facade, Arcadia is a tale of peripheralization and of extended urbanization. Here, land abandonment often entangles with land grabbing, and the challenges of energy transition meet the challenges of ecological crisis that we are facing today. Yet, in these landscapes, alternative practices persist. They narrate possibilities for a symbiotic way of life beyond binaries, center and periphery, urban and rural, fostering a multi-species resistance on an ever-urbanizing planet. In this sense, radical, innovative practices for socio-ecological transition emerge from the periphery and the margins of urban life. Next slide, please. So a pivotal finding of my doctoral work has been the portrait of Astochorikos. Asti means the city, and Chorio, Chorikos means the village. So Astochorikos is a hybrid figure who embodies both rural and urban identities, tidally inhabits both the center and the periphery. He or she actively cares for and claims rights to both the center and the periphery, to the city and the countryside. So Astochorikos counters the prevailing narrative of the periphery who's abandoned and empty. Astochorikos shows us possibilities to reimagine ways of dueling and being politically active at these peripheral landscapes. In fact, this observation and the term of Astochorikos roots in the work of Konstantinos Karavidas, a thorough scholar of the Greek 20th century rural sphere, the life archive of whom is housed here at the Gennadius library. So my research here builds upon oral histories and practices collected in Arcadia during my fieldwork at the PhD. So next. So delving into the incredibly rich archive of Karavidas here, I seek a historically and conceptually situated perspective on contemporary questions of citizenship and commoning in peripheral areas. In his poetic literary production, in the feminist and intellectual work of his life partner Tula and his daughter Zoe Karavida, I seek for latent influences as I explore the hypothesis that his pioneering work originates in a different epistemology imbued with feminist transepistemological dimensions. By doing so, I hope to unearth alternative radical imaginaries on participation, governance, and commoning, emerging from the periphery of global capital and from the margins of urban life. So I wholeheartedly thank Maria, the team of the archives, and the Schwarz Fellowship for offering me this opportunity to engage with these very urgent questions for Greek periphery. Thank you.
What comes next for you in this? Is this a project you pursue further now, and is it a continuation? Is it a continuous project for you?
I hope so. I can share with you my aspiration. So during the fieldwork and the archival work, I have created a personal, let's say, register of oral histories and practices from the pastoral community and the farmers, which I think respond very much to the point to what we experience as socio-ecological challenges at the moment. So my aspiration at the moment would be to find a way to bring this theoretical research into practice. I would like to have some workshops with the local community to basically give back a lot of the knowledge that I collected during the work, and potentially invite them to participate actively in the planning of the region. So there are specific tools that are now at hand where local communities can have a voice and share their knowledge in the making of regional plans. So I really hope I will find a way to, and the resources actually, to bring all this more theoretical investigation into practice and into the planning discourse for the mountainous regions.
Do you find that the local political, the peripheria in the political sense, do they show any sort of activity or interest around these sort of topics? Is there any hope there?
So frankly, my observation was that the locals are really disempowered. It's been almost a century of marginalization, and although they hold a lot of knowledge and their practices have a lot of value, they themselves, they don't realize the value of the knowledge and practices. So I think there is a lot of work to be done to offer them the confidence and the voice to gain again interest and participation. I have found really fragmented local initiatives that aspire to change the status quo. The Menalon Trail is one of them. It's an initiative of local volunteers that work with paths and actually bringing together community under environmental questions. But I think this is an exception rather than the rule. So as a conclusion or as a point, I think that the local communities are really disempowered and they don't even believe in the value of knowledge and practices they perform. And this is a key problem because they give up very quickly when alternatives are offered to them.
Okay. It's okay for me. We could go on the very rapidly. Okay. Since we are here with our prominent researchers, we would like to know very rapidly, very fast around, about how the Schwarz research they did fits with your next research scientific plans. How it fits to your next scientific project for everybody. Okay. What are your plans in the future in relationship with the research you did in this year?
Shall we start from Sophia?
Okay, yes, thank you. Thank you once again. I'm very happy for being here. I just forgot to tell everyone in the start, from the beginning. So what I'm planning to do now is that I would like to go a little bit social. I would like to explore how other music researchers are dealing with travel accounts, actually. My point of departure is always ethnomusicology, is always musical encounters in the Mediterranean. My main research is music ensembles that are doing early music, actually. So I have to do a lot. I have a lot to do with musical practices. But I find a very interesting dynamic through the travel accounts. I would like to combine more this kind of research. I did a lot of interviews with musicians. I'm always discussing with them. I observe a lot, so many concerts. So those interactions among cultures still happen nowadays. There's a whole trend of people, ensembles, new, old ensembles doing early music and try to build dialogues with other music cultures. So it would be very nice to combine also with some elder people that are not living anymore, but maybe they have interesting points of view on how they experienced music in older times, traveling across the Mediterranean. So my next step is just searching for some kind of network, people who research on music, and maybe they are interested in travel accounts, and in what ways to explore together.
Thank you. Next one, who's
Mrs. Georgiadou.
Hello. I would like to take a couple of minutes of your time and say that for me the importance of getting this fellowship was not just being able to access the archives and the treasures of the Gennadius library. It also had to do with that very specific point in time. It was 2021, right after the COVID lockdowns. We were very much in isolation, academic isolation too, so being able to transition from that to the very active academic community of the Gennadius library and generally the American school. For me, this opportunity really pointed out the importance of proximity to the subject matter, proximity to the archives we study and also the communities we engage with. So I would like to take this opportunity and thank both the Schwarz Foundation and also the Gennadius Library and Maria Georgopoulou for that. So as for my future plans, my work continues documentation with a documentation of similar sites, expanding the body of work that I was able to start here through this study, and this is informing my publications, which are currently underway, but also as a longer-term plan, I think it would be a hope of mine that this will inform policy on how we deal with architectural heritage on the fringes in both sides of the Aegean. So,
okay,
yes,
thank you. Alexandra?
Well, first of all, I will have to start from the fact that I had the chance to see the archive of Elias Petropoulos, which was, first of all, very interesting, and secondly, to me, it was a way to open my mind a lot. First of all, because Elias Petropoulos is a very ambiguous personality, for those who know. So delving into the archive gave me the opportunity to see a little bit his perspectives, his thoughts, and the structure of what he perceived as a rebetiko or as a epokosmos, or as, no matter how many definitions he wanted to give. I'm not saying that I agree with all those definitions. It is very interesting to see his mentality and his thoughts on that, because sometimes the books that we get are very much different than the archive that can show the small thoughts, even if they say the same things, even if the same things are printed or handwritten. In the handwritten paper, you can also see perhaps the thoughts that they have. And this was very important to me. Secondly, it gave me the opportunity to combine a little bit in my research in interwar period in Rebetiko, the archival research with oral history and oral testimonies, which is mostly my way of, was until this research was mainly my way of working. So it was a very, it was a very opening, let's say, opportunity, because it was the first time that I had the chance to read and see what is what critical analysis of the archive is, and read theory on this, and think about the archive not only as a fact, but mostly as one more testimony, let's say, one more narration. So, thirdly, it gave me the opportunity to be a principal investigator in a research. I had to control what I should do in 1 year. So, it might sound a little bit, not of a big importance, but I think that managing our time and like project management thing is something important that we have to learn when we are doing research. So I had the chance to do this in 1 year, which gave me the chance to do other projects later in Canada, as the ones that I have told you, and I had the chance to work on something, on a field which is really transdisciplinary, because as you mentioned before, being a person that is in urban studies and in music, sometimes it's not very easy to exist. And I believe that through the Schwarz Fellowship, I found a space to work on in Greece, and I think that this gave me a boost that I needed in order to go further. And last but not least, the coexistence with the fellows was very important, because exchanging viewpoints and sharing was very nice and interesting, especially to the path of a researcher, to the lonely path that the researcher usually takes.
Okay, thank you. Thanks a lot. Panita?
Yes, I'll try to be brief because I have a lot of plans in mind. So I will just say 3 points. First of all, continuing from what Alexandra said, I also wanted to say that till today I'm learning here. I'm very happy that I've heard all the rest of the fellows, and I'm still learning. So this is, I think, already a big gift, let's say, from all this experience here. In general, all this approach and all this research I did here, it's part of an itinerary I'm doing and I'm constructing in my life, that it's always there. So part of this itinerary is to continue further the research on Attica Basin and in general landscape in the city, and add the input of water, the waterways that are very important, that are lost, they are abandoned and neglected, and it's something very crucial for Athens today, and very difficult. So I think first step would be water, find a way to map water, continue the same approach, research by cartography, by mapping, and create maybe an interactive map of waterways in Athens and Attica. Second could be, in a further time, an observatory maybe of the natural elements of Attica and Athens in the way they do it in Catalonia, since I'm trying to find this linkage. And thirdly, research is also teaching, so I'm always in a constant relationship with the university and trying to give these, let's say, findings or these wealth that I discover wherever I go to the educational, let's say, or to teaching to the younger generation that I hope they do it better, that they are our hope, let's say. So I think these 3 very good.
Thank you. A very optimistic person.
Yes, I am.
That's always a good thing. Alexandra?
Yes, so at the most basic research level, my hope is that I will take some of the analysis I've been doing about the personification of the city of Athens and lots of other famous cities in Greek history, not just Troy, but also Constantinople, Adrianople, Smyrna. Take some of these threads and extend them to other cities which had been devastated in World War II that had music written about them. So Dresden, Warsaw, Leningrad, Hiroshima, to name a few. On a broader level, in 2003, musicologist Katie Romano, she wrote a magnificent book, which was so helpful for my preliminary research, Serbian and Greek Music History. And the subtitle was A Patch to Western Music History. So I want to contribute to patching the holes in Western music history that we have. I think, Sophia, you mentioned that oftentimes music and music history is studied in a vacuum. And we just can't do that anymore. And also because music is so interdisciplinary. It's architecture, it's policy, it's history, it's so many things. And I think broadening to be more interdisciplinary and to include more traditions is only going to help the field further. As a final note, to be here in Athens, once again, as I'm able to fully appreciate everything that I'm seeing, has been such a treat. And I joined some of the regular member trips across Greece last year, and they had to suffer my presence, so I'm very sorry about that. But it blew my mind to look at all the archaeology that had been done and realize that there was still so much more to do. Because oftentimes in music, it can seem like a closed canon, that we've found all of the great masterpieces and that there aren't anymore. But my experience here has taught me that, well, to borrow a phrase from the classical side of the campus, there's so much to excavate in the archives, and the find of a lifetime could be out there, and I think that's just so exciting.
Okay. Fantastic. So,
Christos.
Yes.
Well, we're past the time where we should have stopped, so I'm going to be very brief. All this research we're talking about cannot be monetized, cannot be commodified. I know that my research could be, in ways, could provide leeway for different kind of uses for listed buildings, but I would not aim towards that. The fact that I could research subjects that I care about without thinking of their possible applications in real life is something that can be provided through grants like this. And this is what we do, I think. This is what we search for. These kind of grants, these kind of fundings are the only thing that help humanities and other related disciplines produce research that has nothing to do with the market. So I think that at the moment, it helped me a lot. Right after my PhD, I was here. And then I started teaching, I kept on publishing stuff. I did another postdoc. Now I'm working with Konstantina at the ERC program. So I'm researching the other side of the same coin, the post-war urban reconstruction of cities like Athens. So it's a very, very nice, and I'm grateful for this step that was given to me.
Okay. I know him, he's a very active researcher and a good teacher. Somebody's telling me. Okay. Now, Maria. Thank you.
Yes, first of all, I want to say that the opportunity that has given to me to study Mavris papers at the Gennadius library is very important to my PhD. Because Mavris' activity is sort of a model for my project due to the fact that he can transcend the local level and create connections between different places and musical cultures and identities. So I'm very grateful that I have this opportunity. And secondly, as far as my future plans, through my PhD and my work, I would like to promote the field of Sephardic music in the academia in Greece, because I feel that it is a field that hasn't been that much explored. Thank you.
Okay, thank you too. And last but not least, Metaxia.
Yes, thank you. So maybe just to share a little bit of an insight, I thought the research in the Kappa Delta Karavidas paper would be a one-year project, but in fact, opening this archive, I have found an unbelievable material. So just to give a picture, it's 150 boxes of amazing detailed work that he did. So I have to say that entering the archive, the project completely shifted. So I think now it's going to be a probably 5-year or more time work to go through this material. But one thing that struck me and I can share with you is that this archive, but also the work I did, seemed very grounded to the specificity of Greek reality and perhaps to the exceptionality of Peripheria and Eparchia. But starting presenting the work to different platforms, especially in the RC21 that happened 2 years ago, a lot of concepts coming out of the work, one being periphery and peripheralization, resonated with researchers coming from really different geographies. So basically the work that has opened now and I'm doing is to find links and connections. We are planning a special issue at Antipode, which is a journal for critical and urban studies, where researchers from Global South and Latin America have jumped in to talk about their experience of periphery and peripheralization, and also a panel at the annual meeting of AAG, the American Association of Geographers at Detroit, which is in March. Then a very interesting collaboration that emerges especially out of the concepts offered by Karavidas, that being Astochorikos and another that I didn't mention today, communitism. It's a collaboration with the Von Forum at ETH Zurich, where they saw a lot of potential to discuss the Swiss mountains and their experience of the periphery through the lens that Karavidas is offering. And last, and I can conclude here, I'm opening a new collaboration with the University of Thessaly, where the topic is precisely this, the Greek eparchia, periphery, and the countryside. And the idea is there to create a kind of observatorium, a paratiritírio for the Greek peripheria, ύπαιθρος, and eparchia, and building upon concepts and knowledge as the ones of Karavidas, see with new eyes and critical perspectives all these areas, peripheral areas that have been almost forgotten since decades or a century from Greek scholarship, as their history has always been narrated from Athens and from scientists educated in centers. So yeah, that's the plans and the upcoming projects.
Well, this has been a very, very interesting discussion. I mean, discovering so many different topics which are open up ways of thought, of knowledge, but also of practical, let's say, action as the next step. So, thank you very much for all this. All 8 of you, and of course thank you to the initiative of the Schwarz Foundation, which falls on such fertile grounds.
Thank you too. Thank you too. I learned a lot of things today, really, and my best wishes for your future. Okay, so thank you for all of you.
If you don't mind, by way of closing, and I mean, after thanking all of you and the 2 conveners actually as well, I wanted to say for our plans, we've talked about the fact that your work is important, and we would like to know and share with others what you have done. So there will be a publication. Now, whether it will be separate music and separate architecture, we haven't decided, but this will happen soon, as you know. So I think it's important to have something in print, in writing, to really, for us all and others to know. An observation from tonight for me is actually that it's very exciting to see all of you together the previous years and all of that, and we should be we should be doing this more often because it's all about sharing information and being inspired, because this is what it is. And finally, because next year we're celebrating 100 years of the Gennadios Library, it's really refreshing to know that the baton is being passed to the younger generation, that you have ways in which to be inspired by the material and inspire us all. And thank you very much. And thank you, Fiona.